there was a point where he was delusional and having kind of episodes that were drug related, but brushes with the law and flirting with kind of homelessness and it was unsustainable. He'd been through rehab a couple of times unsuccessfully, and looked like it was just getting worse.
Decades into his life, Ron Howard is facing a fear he can't outwork, can't plan around, can't control. His younger brother, Clint, is battling a serious, life-altering illness. The details remain private, but the weight in Ron's eyes says more than words ever could. This isn't a small setback. It's the kind of illness that shifts a family's heartbeat, turning long days into hospital visits, long nights into quiet worry that never ends. For a man who built his life around control, fixing problems, rewriting endings, this is a brutal awakening. Ron can't yell cut. He can't reset the scene. And he can't protect his brother the way Clint once protected him when fame got heavy and the cameras felt cold. For the first time in decades, Ron admitted something the world never expected. He's scared. Not of failure, not of critics, not of losing momentum, but of losing the one person who's been beside him through every twist of his story. That raw, fragile honesty, that helpless love, has changed him in ways even his closest friends noticed. And it's this fear, this pain, that shaped his reaction when news came about Rob Reiner. Because as Clint's health worsened, Ron was forced to confront a truth he'd buried for years. No matter how many awards you earn, no matter how perfect the frame, no matter how carefully you plan the ending, some stories are beyond your control. There was a time in his life when everything felt like it was quietly unraveling. Moments when he drifted into delusion, slipping in and out of episodes fueled by substance abuse. These weren't isolated incidents. They came with brushes with the law, flirtations with homelessness, and a growing sense that his life was becoming unsustainable. Rehab was attempted more than once, but nothing seemed to stick. With each passing year, things only appeared to get worse, not better. For a long time, Ron Howard looked like the exception in Hollywood, the rare legend untouched by chaos, always smiling, always composed, the former child star who matured into a master director, building a resume that spoke for itself. To the outside world, he was perfection personified, calm, controlled, unshaken. But what no one saw was the quiet storm he carried within him. The memories he never spoke about, the thoughts he kept buried, the emotional weight he learned to hide behind professionalism and grace. While the public saw consistency and success, Ron was holding onto truths he never allowed to surface. That silence finally began to crack after the heartbreaking news of Rob Reiner's passing sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Suddenly, Ron Howard began opening up. And what he's been saying has stirred people deeply. He's talking about the real Hollywood, the silent competition that never makes headlines, the unspoken emotions shared between legends, the mutual respect that exists beneath the surface, rarely captured on camera. Rob Reiner's loss struck something deep inside him, forcing Ron to confront how fragile everything truly is, how quickly life shifts, how even the brightest stars can carry complicated histories with one another. What makes it so powerful is how personal it feels. Ron's long-held restraint has softened. His words now carry weight. He hints at memories tied directly to Rob Reiner, moments never publicly acknowledged. And slowly, people are beginning to realize there was far more to their connection than anyone ever knew. Then came the shock. Authorities announced that charges would be filed against Nick Reiner, accused of killing his parents, actor and director Rob Reiner, and photographer and producer Michelle Singer Reiner. The news stunned the world and cast an unbearable shadow over an already devastating loss. Against that backdrop, Ron Howard's story suddenly feels heavier, richer, more layered than ever. Born on March 1, 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma, Ron was raised in a household where creativity ruled, but discipline never took a back seat. His parents, actor Rance Howard and actress Jean Spiegel, immersed him in a world driven by imagination, long hours, and constant uncertainty. It was a Hollywood childhood before Hollywood even fully understood what that meant. That environment shaped Ron, and it also quietly bonded him to people like Rob Reiner in ways few could understand. Before most children could even form full sentences, Ron Howard was already standing beneath blistering studio lights. At just 18 months old, he appeared in Frontier Woman, unknowingly stepping into a lifelong relationship with the camera. That single moment became the foundation of a career that never truly allowed him to step away, even when he desperately wanted to. By the late 1950s, the Howard family relocated to California, chasing the rapidly growing promise of television. From that moment on, the concept of a normal childhood disappeared entirely. Dinner tables doubled as script stations. His father balanced military duties with auditions. Ron, still losing baby teeth, was already running lines like a seasoned professional. While other children rode bicycles through neighborhoods, Ron's playground was sound stages. His childhood unfolded beneath artificial lights instead of open skies. Years later, Ron would describe those early years as a golden cage. Safe, yes, but deeply lonely. He had the privileges of fame, yet missed the simplest joys other children took for granted. He belonged to a world built entirely by adults. Everything changed on October 3, 1960, when the Andy Griffith Show premiered. At just 6 years old, Ron became America's beloved Opie Taylor. Overnight, he transformed into a national symbol of innocence and warmth. But behind that image was a quiet boy finishing homework alone in small studio rooms, listening to laughter and play echo in from outside. His father did everything he could to protect him. He fought for better scripts. He insisted on grounding lessons. And he drilled one rule into Ron's soul: never act cute, just act honest. That single lesson defined Ron Howard's artistic identity. Yet even with love and protection, the ache remained. He was adored on screen, but never truly belonged off it. And while Ron carried that pressure, Rob Reiner was rising through the same industry. Another young man learning how fame can lift you up while quietly trapping you inside expectations. Those anxieties didn't vanish when the cameras stopped rolling. They accumulated year after year, becoming part of Ron's emotional foundation. Decades later, he admits those early wounds never fully healed. They shaped how he viewed fame, family, and the struggles of others who grew up in that same strange spotlight, including Rob Reiner. When the Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, Ron was just 14 years old, yet he'd already spent 8 seasons living inside a world that wasn't real. He grew up surrounded by kindness, but missed out on teenage chaos, mistakes, rebellion, and discovery. Even moments meant to be joyful carried pressure. During The Music Man, an 8-year-old Ron struggled with a dance scene. Terrified, he whispered to Shirley Jones, "I can't do it." The crew hid his missteps with creative camera angles. The audience saw charm. Ron felt fear. That empathy stayed with him, and later shaped how deeply he understood Rob Reiner's journey. By the time Happy Days arrived in 1974, Ron once again found himself America's favorite son. As Richie Cunningham, he embodied wholesomeness, but the walls were closing in again. He was aging, the world was changing, and his character remained frozen in nostalgia. In a bold moment, Ron wrote to ABC asking for a storyline acknowledging the Vietnam War, something real. The request was rejected instantly. That rejection didn't explode, it simmered. Ron realized if he wanted a voice, he needed to move behind the camera. Directing became his escape. In 1977, Roger Corman gave him the opportunity that changed everything. Ron starred in Eat My Dust and earned the chance to direct his own film. That project became Grand Theft Auto, co-written with his father on a shoestring budget. It was chaotic, risky, and wildly successful. For the first time, Ron felt creative control. But control came with obsession. Success followed Night Shift, Splash, Cocoon, Parenthood. With each hit, expectations grew heavier. By the early 1990s, Ron wasn't just successful, he was trusted completely. And that trust came with relentless pressure. Then came Apollo 13. Ron chased authenticity to the edge of self-destruction. He worked 18-hour days, collapsed from exhaustion, and returned to set greeted by a crew wearing shirts that read Mission Control. It was a wake-up call. Years earlier, in 1991, Ron made a choice that haunted him. He left his wife Cheryl home with newborn children to shoot far and away overseas. When he returned, the emotional distance was unmistakable. His daughter didn't recognize him. That moment broke something inside him. Years later, during his 50th anniversary celebration with Cheryl, Ron admitted he would trade every award just to reclaim lost time with his children. That's why Rob Reiner's passing hit so deeply. Because it wasn't just about loss, it was reflection. Before everything else, there was Clint Howard, Ron's younger brother, his constant, his mirror. They survived Hollywood together, but by the late 1980s, Clint spiraled. In 1990, Ron delivered an ultimatum born from love: get help or lose me forever. Clint chose recovery. Their story became public in their memoir, The Boys, a testament to family, honesty, and survival. And now, decades later, Ron Howard understands more than ever that fame doesn't protect you, it exposes you. And sometimes, it costs more than anyone realizes. Decades later, a new fear has crept into Ron Howard's life, one he cannot outwork, cannot plan around, cannot control. His younger brother, Clint, has been facing a serious health battle, life-altering. Ron calls it. The details remain private, but the weight in his eyes, the subtle slump in his shoulders, speak volumes that no press release ever could. This isn't a minor setback or a simple illness. It's the kind of challenge that rearranges the rhythm of a family's heartbeat, turning long days into hospital visits and quiet nights into endless worry. For a man whose life has been built on precision, control, and the ability to solve problems and rewrite endings, this has been a brutal awakening. Ron can't yell cut. He can't reset the scene. He cannot shield his brother the way Clint once protected him when fame felt too heavy, the spotlight too lonely. And now, for the first time in decades, Ron admitted publicly what no one expected. He is scared, not of failure, not of criticism, not of career setbacks, but of losing the one person who has been by his side through every twist of his story. That raw, fragile honesty, helpless love exposed, has changed him in ways even his closest friends have noticed. And it is this exact fear, this ache, that shaped his reaction to the devastating news about Rob Reiner. As Clint's condition worsened, Ron was forced to confront a truth he had buried for years. No matter how many awards you earn, how perfect the frame, or how meticulously you plan an ending, some stories are beyond your control. The man who has spent half a century guiding Hollywood with calm precision, shaping stories that touched millions, now faces something he cannot direct, edit, or manage. For the first time, Ron Howard has stared directly at his own fragility, stripped of cameras, applause, and the comforting illusion of control. In recent interviews, he admitted that Clint's illness has shaken him deeper than any career setback he's ever faced. Not the disappointment of EDTV, not the pressure of Apollo 13, not the uphill climb of Solo, a Star Wars story. Nothing compares to the raw, paralyzing fear of losing his brother. He describes long, sleepless nights replaying their childhood like an old film reel. The tiny studio classroom at Dillu Studios, the hushed conversations between takes, the way Clint's presence made those freezing, fluorescent-lit sets feel warm. Memories that once felt sweet and nostalgic now serve as stark reminders of what is at stake. Even in moments of creativity, the weight never lifts. Ron shared how he would take me through sessions in the studio, playing freshly recorded tracks, moving, singing, dancing with the lyrics, stopping to adjust, consulting the engineer. He couldn't contain himself. The joy of creation collided with guilt, the guilt of soaring professionally while Clint battled privately. The guilt of not recognizing warning signs sooner, of failing to protect his brother, as Clint once shielded him from the loneliness of growing up in front of cameras. That heavy regret has reshaped the way Ron lives now. This new chapter, a life governed by love, fear, and hard-earned wisdom, has forced him to slow down. He stepped back from long, grueling productions, turning down projects that would take him away from home for months. Even Imagine Entertainment, the powerhouse studio he co-founded in 1985, now runs more independently, giving him a resource he once considered impossible: time. No more endless call sheets. No more 18-hour days. Today, Ron Howard's life revolves around what matters most: family, his brother, and the fragile, irreplaceable beauty of simply being present. And it is this grounded, vulnerable version of him that makes his reflections on Rob Reiner's legacy all the more powerful. One legend quietly honoring another. Both men shaped by love, loss, and the cost of caring too deeply. Ron's days now move at a different rhythm, slower, softer, centered on family dinners, quiet conversations, and the moments he once let slip by. He refuses to lose them again. In one of the most emotional confessions of his career, he admitted that the silence between projects had taught him more than any award, film, or accolade ever could. For decades, he told everyone else's story while neglecting his own. Now, at 71, with a legacy worth over $200 million, he finally understands that no achievement matters if the people you love start to fade from your life. Fans were stunned, not by the revelation of his struggle, but by the years he carried that pain in total silence. The calm, steady, endlessly kind man they knew had been fighting private battles without showing a crack. And when he spoke, the heartbreak was undeniable. Some wounds never fully heal, even for one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. But just as Ron began to find peace in this slower, more grounded chapter, tragedy struck again. The world learned of Rob Reiner's sudden passing, unexpected, devastating, a blow no one saw coming. Ron was already on emotional thin ice, grappling with Clint's worsening condition, weighed down by fear, guilt, and regret. Then came the headline: Rob Reiner gone at 78. His wife, Mitchell. The singer, too. The tragedy sent shockwaves across Hollywood. For Ron, it wasn't just news, it was a gut punch from life itself. He had already been facing the heartbreak of watching someone he loved slip away, and now he was confronted with the loss of another who had defined so much of his own journey. For a man known for calm composure, Ron was shaken in ways words could barely capture. Rob Reiner had been a force of nature, fierce, sharp-witted, fearless, and passionate. While Ron's style was quiet and methodical, they shared the same creative fire. Both had grown up in Hollywood's demanding glare, molded by cameras and expectations, and both had fought to keep their work authentic in an industry that constantly demanded compromise. They were two sides of the same coin, one loud and impassioned, the other patient and precise. They weren't enemies, they were mirrors, reflecting the parts of each other they couldn't always face. Ron reflected on this in interviews, speaking openly about the unspoken rivalry and mutual inspiration. Rob and I didn't compete the way people think, he said. It wasn't about box office or credits. It was about legacy, about meaning. We pushed each other without even trying. I think we both wanted to outdo the silence between us. The revelation rippled through the industry. There were whispers of creative tensions, near misses with scripts, misinterpreted comments, and unreturned calls, all once seemingly irrelevant, now laden with unspoken regret. Ron has been revisiting old photos, letters, and films, quietly analyzing what Reiner did differently. When asked what he would say to Rob if he could speak to him one last time, Ron's answer silenced the room. I'd tell him we were both wrong. It was never competition. We were trying to say the same thing, just in two different languages. Perhaps beneath the rivalry, beneath awards and admiration, what truly bound Ron Howard and Rob Reiner wasn't competition at all. It was the shared ache of artists trying to make sense of the same fragile, unpredictable world. By early 2026, the story of Rob Reiner's passing had faded from headlines. But for Ron, it lingered in every thought, every interview, every quiet moment. What the world saw as closure, Ron experienced as a wound that refused to heal. He replayed their last conversation at a Beverly Hills charity event, flashes all around, and yet a moment of calm. Rob had laughed. You know, Ronnie, we're both control freaks pretending we're easygoing guys. Ron smiled then, but now those words echoed like a haunting refrain. Friends say Ron has been quietly working on a personal project, a script inspired by two filmmakers, their shared beginnings, and the invisible rivalry that shaped them. It's not about Rob exactly, one source explained, but you can feel him in every line. It's a conversation they never got to finish, a work of art as much a tribute as a confession. Early drafts are raw, emotional, and deeply honest, two storytellers trying to outdo one another, only to realize too late that they were reaching for the same truth all along. When asked if it's connected to Reiner, Ron smiled faintly. Let's just say it's about what happens when you lose the person who understood you the most, even when you didn't understand each other. This is where the story lands, not with clean resolution, but with the quiet truth of two men who spent their lives telling the world stories while still searching for their own. Ron Howard and Rob Reiner. Different paths, different styles, same fire burning at the core, the need to make meaning from life's chaos. In the wake of Rob's loss, Ron stands softened, reflective, finally at peace with the idea that legacy isn't about perfection. It's about connection. His story, Rob's story, Clint's story. All reminders that behind cameras, headlines, and awards, life unfolds in love, regret, and resilience. At the end of every film, every career, every friendship, the truth remains. We only get so much time, and it's up to us to make it count. Was their quiet rivalry a curse or a hidden gift? Did it push them toward greatness or keep them from finding peace? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on the untold tension between Ron Howard and Rob Reiner. And if this story hit you as deeply as it hit me, like, share, and subscribe. Because some stories don't end when the credits roll.